Memphis is a blues, Nashville's country, right? Upper East Tennessee's bluegrass. What the hell is Chattanooga? And trying to figure out a
We're the
way.
in between.
Right,
We're
right.
the
But
in
I mean,
between.
try selling that in an elevator, right? I mean,
Adapt, change, grow, force majeure. Now we're hearing hitting pause. What's going on with all these new words with the music festivals? We're going to talk about it this week on the What Podcast. Welcome back to the What Podcast. I'm Barry, that's for Taco. Joining us is Bryan Stone. You know him, you love him. We know him, we love him. He's been on the show several times. He's a longtime member of Camp Nut Butter. Glad to see you, Bryan. How are you?
Thanks for having me on, and going forward, looking forward to be involved more often. And I'm not the one with the bad connection for maybe the first time ever, and I'm happy about that.
It's
Hard
early.
lines work
Made
very well.
history.
Hard
Yeah.
connections work very well. But looking forward to talking to the mayor
It's
of the
early.
city of Chattanooga.
We'll see how it goes. So yeah, Bryan is with us. As we've said before, Brad, co-host. What do you call it? Emeritus? I don't know. That makes him sound like he's gone. Brad is taking some time off, and Bryan has agreed to join Russ and I, Lord Taco and I, to share his insights. You've been to every single one, right?
Yeah, jump the fence in the first year. Down the line, we can spend some more time on stuff like that if we want to go back and look at some Bonnaroo history. Jump the fence in the first year, but I was there. Barely counts, but it
Me
counts.
too. Me
And
too.
then
I was there day one.
and then I've
I
been there
count it.
the whole weekend, or at least over 2/3 of the weekend, pretty much ever since. And Brad's as good as it gets when it comes to this kind of industry work, and happy to be able to try to fill a little bit of a void there. But it's one of my favorite things to do: talk music, talk festivals, talk just the entertainment industry all the way around. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. I should spend a minute. If you listen to this show, and I have to keep reminding myself, not everybody listens every week, which is stunning. I don't understand it, but can you
I don't
imagine?
understand why they
I
wouldn't.
don't get it.
I
What's the
know,
matter
but,
with you people?
So, I mean, I had 37 years writing basically entertainment for the Chattanooga Times Free Press. Bryan is a veteran radio guy. Worked for Brad, with Brad, not
during
with.
the more unfortunate times in my career. I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'm
and
kidding.
you host your own podcast, Stone on Air, which is I've always said a great name and one of the greatest logos ever. I don't know if I've ever told you that. I think Nate Gale came up with that, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I
Yeah,
think it's awesome.
the podcast I do on a weekly basis is focusing right here locally where we're from in Chattanooga, a little regional, mostly right here in town. So I thank you, Wisconsin, for being here. You probably don't care about the podcast that I do, but it is there if you'd like to check it out.
Yeah. So anyway, so point being, Bryan, like us, has Bonnaroo ties and media ties, and you like the sausage making stuff almost as much as we do, I assume. And so, looking forward to having you contribute and be part of the show. And today is a great example of that. I'm very happy. Uh, so to set this up, we found out this week that Moon River, which is a festival here in Chattanooga, that moved here 5 years ago after starting in Memphis. It moved because it outgrew Memphis. Came here, sold out in like 10 minutes the first year.
Yeah, and
3
we've
hours.
covered Moon River every year that it's been here too. We've gone and we've interviewed guests. We've talked to
big part
we've
of this
talked
show.
to Drew Holcomb. We've talked to a lot of people with Moon River, so it's been a big part of our show.
Big part of our show, big part of Chattanooga, and we're going to talk to Mayor Tim Kelly, Chattanooga Mayor Tim Kelly, because Moon River announced that it was hitting the pause button. They're not the only one. We've heard of a couple of festivals that are hitting the pause button, and that's a new phrase. And so we're going to talk about that a little bit. New phrase to us, anyway. I don't know what that means. In our minds, and maybe we're cynics, that means you're not coming back. So why not just say we're not coming back? So the pause part of it is new, right?
Yeah, and that's just going down the road. It's typical PR kind of stuff, whether it be political, entertainment, or whatever it might be. You don't say exactly what you're
Right.
doing, and because you want to play some
It's not
damage.
you, it's me.
Yeah,
It's not you, it's me.
yeah, it's damage control for reaction.
Heard that before.
Damage control for reaction, and if you just say thanks Chattanooga, we out, that doesn't sit as well as we're going to make it bigger and bolder and better in 25. Well, bigger, better, bolder, all those words to me equals another city, another venue, and thanks, but no thanks. But that's just the cynic in me. If you're here regularly, you'll eventually start to realize that's kind of where I come from on most all subject matter. Hope I'm wrong, but when you talk about the pause button, Barry, the pause button terminology has been used maybe the most in this damn city right here.
Yeah.
Both of our festivals are gone.
Yeah, we've had two.
One of the coolest cities in the South now has lost our big festival music scene, which we've had for so long, and we'll hear more from the mayor. Can we get that back? Will that continue?
Do we want it back? Maybe. Do we need it back?
Do we need it? Exactly. That is a legitimate question. Do we want it? Most people are going to answer yes, because that's an easy, quick answer. Do we need it? That's the more difficult question. Do we need it? The short answer, no. I mean, we don't need it, but I think we all want it. And if it's not Moon River, it's something else.
Just for being factual, we also have a third festival, J-Fest, which we don't talk a lot about because it's a Christian music fest, and I have nothing against Christian music. It's just not in my wheelhouse.
Quite successful.
But it draws 13,000 people, same as Riverbend the last 2 years and Bonnaroo. So, give them their credit. It's just not something we talk a lot about. It's not a camping. It's a one day. It's a different animal for a lot of reasons. But I don't want to ignore them, because for a city our size to have had 3 festivals, in the 10 to 15,000 people range is pretty amazing. But we lost 2 of them within a couple of months, and that's kind of what we're here to talk about. Lots of reasons, lots of speculation. We've heard everything from mismanagement to weather to it's moving to Huntsville. We get into that. Bryan, you asked the mayor directly about that. I have been told prior, I knew it was coming. I had been told that it was moving to Huntsville. My contacts with Live Nation, C3, tell me, no, it's not. It's not going to Huntsville. In no way, shape, or form is it going to Huntsville.
Yeah, I don't have any more insight than you would on this.
Yeah, my people in Huntsville were stunned when I asked. The reason we mention that is because Huntsville has become so aggressive in a good way. I don't mean that ugly. They have decided they want to become a music city. Their mayor is committed. Their city count, whatever, the powers that be are committed to making Huntsville a music place. And that's why I think this show will be interesting to people outside of Chattanooga and Huntsville, is because that's what we talk about.
And we talked to Mayor Kelly about that specifically. And for clarification on the front end here, when we're talking about TIFs, that's tax incremental financing, which is a pretty creative way of the last, I don't know how long, 20 years or so, of governmental spending and repayment of bonds and things like that. That we have a whole lot of other things that have nothing to do with music here in this town that people are fighting over TIFs. So when you hear TIFs, that's what we're talking about, tax incremental financing that will, in theory, pay back this money that has been borrowed to fund these facilities, to fund these events. And it was news to me. When you find out today, listen to today's show, how aggressive Huntsville has been, and they're using that same kind of governmental financing. And their area of Alabama doesn't seem to care. At least it doesn't appear. Meaning, from just an overall snapshot of social media is really your best place to see that. You don't see as much pushback here in Chattanooga. We're getting a lot of pushback on that.
It's interesting you say it that way, because that's to bring it back to Bonnaroo. A lot of people don't care. You buy a ticket and you go and you hear the music, but it's not a rainbows and unicorns relationship up there in Coffee
No,
County.
it's not. No. They've had land issues, annex issues, tax issues, Coffee County issues. How much money here? The $3 per ticket there. They want, there's been a lot, and that's been quieter recently, but certainly a lot of talk about.
Yeah, I mean the
who
hotels,
gets what out of all this.
Who goes to Manchester other to see Mama and them, except for Bonnaroo? And so a hotel room, goes from $55 to $450. So there's a lot that goes on with stuff like this.
Tennessee is a fabulous state. Governmentally, I have some issues, but landscape and aesthetically, it's one of my favorite states in the union here. But I'd like to say there was something else to do in Manchester. There's not.
There's nothing else to do in Manchester.
There's not. No, if you drive an hour each direction, you'll find something.
Well, that's right. And so
not there.
And that's why I think this was so relevant to have Mayor Kelly on with us, because what does a city do? I mean, how far do you bend over? And he mentions this. How far do you bend over? How much do you give up? How much do you be the aggressor? How much money do you put on the table for an event? And what's the payoff? And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but am I saying that right? I mean, I don't. Those are the questions. A city can write the big fat check, and that is a quote. But then you're on the hook for it. And I didn't say it in the episode, but that's what a lot of people used to do, including Chattanooga with Riverbend, Birmingham, Atlanta, Knoxville, all had city run, city promoted, city financed, at least partially, events, and then you get rained out for 2 straight years.
Well, and many of them have
right. Right?
Yeah. Well, and many of the ones you're just speaking of the other cities surrounding, they had all gone out of business.
That's my point.
Yeah,
that's exactly my point.
Music Midtown, the initial one, went out of business. City Stages in Birmingham went out of business. River Stages in Nashville. These are all pretty old. These are all like 20 years old.
Yeah,
they all went out of business, but they were huge, more city street oriented, day come go kind of daily thing, and they all went under. And and they were all government subsidized. So
that's why I bring those up. So that's what it. And we had Mayor Kelly again. I should say this, and I mentioned it briefly, but I'm serious about this. So I woke up on a Saturday morning thinking about this Moon River thing and thought, because I was reading all the social media, everybody's blaming so-and-so and this, that, and it's the city's fault and we need a manager and it's mismanagement. And I thought, well, who can answer that? And I thought Mayor Tim Kelly can. And I thought, who, you don't bother the guy. It's a Saturday morning.
Get the mayor on the phone. Barry, get the mayor on the phone.
Yeah. I'm like, don't bother the guy. And then I thought, you know what? This is exactly what he would want to talk about. So I sent him a text, and it took maybe 3 minutes, and he was like, absolutely. And I do not ever want to abuse a relationship and won't ever again, but I knew this was something that he would want to talk about, and sure enough he did, and he gave us 50 minutes so on a Sunday, and I don't want to discount how much I appreciate that.
Time is money is time. It's valuable.
But I mean, you'll hear he's passionate about it, and I knew he would be. And I say in the interview, and I mean it, and I'll say it again, if there's another mayor out there who cares more about live music than Tim Kelly, I want to meet the guy.
Yep.
So, and he is a Bonnaroo fan. He's been a long time, and we even talk about that.
All right. So quick takeaways. The importance of a music festival to a city. We talk about that. We talk about is it an industry reset Is it a city thing? Is it a Live Nation? Live Nation
Our
run.
price is becoming an issue.
Our price is becoming an issue. We didn't talk about, and I have been told by several people within the industry that this is just a bad year for headliners. He does kind of mention that when he says that DJs are a lot cheaper than bands.
Yeah.
We didn't dial down into that, but that's the truth, right?
It's very true.
So, and we heard last year, Russ, I think we talked about it briefly on this show, just trucking. I mean, logistics, just moving bands from city to city, all of that stuff went way up. So and hotels, which we just mentioned a little while ago, it's all gone up. So
if there's 4 people on stage, there's hundreds behind the scenes responsible for
you got to move them
on stage. Yeah, you got to move them, and there's equipment and
feed them, house them, move them,
feed them. Yeah,
yeah. So, and I think Tim's first answer to our question, what happened is it's complicated. It's complicated. So, all right, what am I missing? This was a great interview. I think it's relevant. I mean, we talk a lot about Chattanooga, but I think everything we talk about is relevant to anywhere USA, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, your festival in your town could do the same thing, and maybe already has.
It's happening all over the country.
Yeah, regardless of the size and the scope of the nature. I mean, it is.
It's just what's new is this pause thing. I still don't know what that. I don't know if, like I said, is that it's not you, it's me. I'm gonna go look and see if there's a prettier girl out there.
Terminology.
Yeah. What if your girlfriend said, "I want to put things on pause"? What does that mean?
Yeah, I think I can do better.
So you're telling me there's a
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we all know what it means.
Don't lose my number, but I think I can do better.
Crap like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how else to describe that, actually. I think I can do better. We're going to go look. All right. Well, here we go. This was our interview with Chattanooga Mayor Tim Kelly talking about Moon River hitting the pause button in Chattanooga and what it might mean to other festivals and other cities. All right. With us again, Lord Taco, Russ, to his family and me, Bryan Stone, and a very special guest, Chattanooga Mayor Tim Kelly. We kind of mentioned in the intro why we wanted to talk to Mayor Kelly, but I want to set it up a little bit more so he kind of knows where we're coming from on this. The big news in our city this week was that Moon River has hit the pause button.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason I wanted to talk is because they're not the only festival around the country that is using that phraseology.
Yep.
And that kind of struck me as odd, number one. Number two, obviously, social media gets out there and everybody wants to blame whoever. And one of the things or entities that gets blamed is the city of Chattanooga itself for not caring, not trying enough, not being committed. And it just struck me Saturday morning as I was sitting there that if there's a mayor out there who is more committed to live music, I want to meet him.
I'd like to think so. Right.
Yeah. I mean, the last time you and I saw each other was at the Richard Lloyd concert.
That's right.
Probably a month ago. And I wanted to give shout out condolences to Richard's wife, Sheila, and her family. They lost their mother this weekend.
Sorry about that. Sorry to hear that.
Condolences to the O'Keefes. Yeah. And also shameless name dropping, but I wanted to tell you also, Tim, and Richard, Rhino Records is going to release a special edition of Marquee Moon.
Oh, that's awesome.
In a little bit.
Yeah.
So you might want to look that up and get on the list.
I will definitely do that. I've been a Rhino fan since, back in the days when I discovered, punk in 1979 or 80. So yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah, they used to put out some great compilations.
Yes, they did.
But let's get right into it. So, and also I want to say this is the What Podcast. We focus basically mostly on Bonnaroo, but also festivals in general. Moon River, and we're going to get way into this. There's so much I want to talk about, and I know Bryan. I can already see him. He's got a list too. I can tell, and he should. But Moon River is a national festival.
Mm-hmm.
It draws 5 years here, almost 55% of the fans come from outside of Chattanooga, so it truly has a national footprint.
Yeah.
It also is a key component to. It was one of the coolest things as part of Chattanooga. I mean, we'll just go ahead and say it, right? So losing it is a big deal. So we're going to work backward. I'm going to go ahead and ask the first couple of questions, and then we'll kind of work from there. But what happened? Why is it gone? And should we be concerned? And how concerned are we as a city about our live music scene?
Well, as always with these things, we're not always, but in this case, as you might suspect, it's complicated, right? I mean, I can't say for sure there's any one thing that caused them to take a pause, but there's a lot of things going on. I mean, one is kind of the economics of the festival business. I think, inflation has affected everything everywhere. And look, they've got a hurdle rate for what they expect, when they do a festival. And I can tell you one thing: it's not the city of Chattanooga. We've been over backwards to help them. They're very happy with what we've done. Um, I think, but I look. I don't think this is. You can't look at this separately from what's going on, as you mentioned in the opening, from what's going on in the rest of the country.
Yeah, I have heard weather the last 2 years, just for to again. There's so much information here. So 2 years ago, it's a 2-day festival, Saturday, Sunday. 2 years ago, the Sunday was basically washed out, literally washed out. And again, to let everybody know how committed the city is, and Mayor Tim Kelly, you reached out to them and said, whatever you need, you got it. And
Man,
we did a podcast. Yeah.
We've had a great relationship with AC for forever. I mean, we were partially responsible for, well, it never came to light, but we were trying to help them rescue Bonnaroo a few years back just by allowing them to, you remember the year that it was so wet, they needed some help with our wastewater treatment facility. Just, we've always had a great relationship with AC, and they look, they still program the Tivoli and the Memorial Auditorium and all that. And I know Ted Heinig really well. And so, it's none of those things. I wouldn't say it's weather. I mean, the weather here is always pretty temperamental. But you can't say for sure. What I will say is, I can remember when they announced Moon River. Look, I mean, I'm a huge fan. I've got a Moon River poster up in my office at City Hall. But true story, right behind my desk. But I can remember thinking, like, how are they going to make this happen? I always thought that venue between the bridges would be amazing for a festival. Never imagined like how they could secure that, how they could manage ingress and egress. I mean, if there's one thing they are really, really good at, it's festival logistics, and they nailed it, right? It's a fantastic spot. And look, I will say this. I mean, we hope that they come back. I'm not sure that they would come back to that spot, which I think is disappointing. We'll see, but I think part of it is capacity. I mean, they want to be able to see more people in there, and we can only really support 10, 12,000 people in there. So this gets back to kind of the economics of festivals. However, right, I think I can tell you behind the scenes, we're talking to some folks about trying to stand up something local, because this is the consolidation of the festival business isn't helpful to any of this either, right? Because there aren't enough entrants and competitors. So, look, I mean, we definitely want to get Moon River back. We're going to work really hard to get it back. But in the meantime, we're going to try to use this year to showcase local artists and smaller artists, and do something ourselves.
Go ahead, Bryan. Then I have a question.
Yeah, Tim. Well, to that point, I know you have initiatives like Soundcore here locally within the city government, and other entities through Parks and Rec and others, how much influence can you have to you as an administration to bring a festival to town or
Mhm.
to try to create one? I mean, I know you.
Yeah.
You got a lot of people with that you work. You know, your administration's big, but
Yeah.
you can get that ball rolling. How far does that go? Because you got to. It's capital. It's
Yeah.
the want to. It's
Yeah.
and it's the availability of artists, not just within the region and the city.
Yeah.
Sometimes, if we're talking on the scale of Moon River and what this podcast talks about,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can get the talks begun, but
Well,
how far can that go?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of levers to pull. One, I mean, very frankly, we could do a lot of things if we were to, write a big fat check. Right? That's just has never been in the cards historically, and I'm not sure that it ever will be. But Huntsville, unfortunately, has kind of changed the game because as the Mayor Battle tells me all the time, like they're kind of ashamed of their last name, as it were, and they have to work really hard to get to change Huntsville's image and bring in a lot of that technical and engineering talent that they need to run the giant military industrial complex that is Huntsville. And so they've changed the game in that they are willing to write checks, put up money, do guarantees to bring festivals down there. We've never done that. We've never really been asked to do that. I'm not sure that there's the political appetite in order to do that. That's a conversation we probably are going to have at some point. But I mean, we have a draw organically. We have a good music scene organically. I would hate to think that we would have to do that. So to your second point, we do have limited resources. I mean, we're fortunate to have people like Carmen Davis and Jonathan Sussman and others. Look, if we're going to do something local, I think it's going to have to be it's not going to be just done out of City Hall. It's going to have to be a overused word, but it's going to have to be kind of a grassroots, organic, local effort to put that on. And but I mean, look, that's one of the things that we don't talk enough about. But in my mind, from the mayor's office, is kind of economic localism and trying to celebrate the elements of local culture and local assets. So I think it'd be really cool if we could pull that off.
Well, speaking of Moon River specifically, just to talk about some rumors, and I'm talking Reddit, I'm talking Twitter, X, I'm talking places that don't, this isn't vetted information. But a couple of the biggest rumors, and this popped into my head when you mentioned Huntsville, because I didn't know what they were talking about. There was people who were like, "Well, hate to steal Moon River from you, there, guys, but we'll take it down here in Huntsville." So, to what you were just speaking to, might lend some credibility to that potential. And then the other one was to take the old Riverbend site, the Ross's Landing site. Maybe Moon River would do better there with a larger capacity area. I don't know, because Riverbend tried to do the same thing as far as attendance is concerned. Because that footprint really is better when it's shrunk. It's not as good when it goes all the way up to the Hunter Museum. For those here locally, sorry for those of you who are out of town who don't know the logistics as well. But those are just a couple of thoughts on Moon River specifically. Just your
let me add to that, Tim. Can I jump in real quick, because it's part of I was one of those, Brian, who sort of connected that dot when we heard. Funnily enough, my wife came home from getting her hair done and said the hairdresser just said that Moon River is leaving. This was like 2 weeks ago. So, I'm reaching out to C3 Presents and people I know in the city, and some of them were like, yeah, that's what we're hearing too. It's going to Huntsville. And part of that rumor, and I'm glad you brought it up, Tim, part of the thinking is Huntsville is being very aggressive. Mm-hmm. They want to become they want to become known for their live music. And from all reports I've heard, they have. So it wasn't as wacky.
It's a cool city too, by the way. I mean, it really has been for a long time.
Well, it is, and again,
anyway,
I've got good friends down there, and again, the mayor and I are close, and we've got we share a lot of information, but trust me, it's not nearly as cool a city as Chattanooga. It's not nearly
No, I'm not.
And it's not as walkable, but they, I think correctly see this, which we definitely need to learn from as a teachable moment. They see it strictly as an economic development tool. When they're trying to recruit talent to Huntsville, that, and the mayor's told me directly, that's the number one thing, right? And their amphitheater there has been transformative in that respect. To your point about we need a larger venue. We know we need like a 5, 6, 7,000 seat boutique amphitheater. We do. It'd be great if we could do something like that. Maybe at the Bend, somewhere, right? That is the missing piece of the puzzle. I know there's a big music study that's been thrashed around here for about a year, waiting to kind of come out and be born. But you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that that's what it's going to tell us, right? That we need that. That is what's missing from our music, live music ecosystem. So those things are all true.
Let me ask, because the timing of this seems so strange, because pre-COVID, and pre your administration even, but pre-COVID, Chattanooga's music trajectory was unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
We were getting, the Graham Nashes, the Bob Dylans, the My Morning Jackets selling out the Tivoli. I mean, everything was going forward. COVID hit, but we still had Moon River. We still had good shows coming. But everything kind of hit a pause.
Yep.
But I said on this show, and I've said on another radio show, and I meant it 6 months ago, that it felt to me like the city was about to hit another sort of renaissance, with the talk about the amphitheater that you mentioned, with the Tivoli Center. That's going to be an unbelievable bonus for the city. So it still felt like everything was moving forward. And then, then Riverbend announces it's hitting pause, and now Moon River's hitting pause. So back to my original second part of my question, is there concern? How concerned should we be as music fans in Chattanooga right now? Or is this, and part B of that, going back to the other thing you said, is this an industry kind of reset thing? Is it a city thing or more of an industry thing? Because that's what I'm hearing and feeling. It feels like an industry kind of reset. That's a lot. I'm sorry.
No, I lost you for a little bit of the middle of that, but I got the gist. And look, I think it's an industry thing for the most part. I do not think, and Ted and the AC folks have been very, very clear that this is nothing that we've done or haven't done. I do think it's an industry thing. And look, again, one thing that's happened between then and now is that AC has been acquired by Live Nation. And I do think that we need more competition, free and fair competition. I'm not the first person, obviously, to suggest that there's some issues around the lack of competitiveness in this space. Live Nation has done a great job of rolling up a lot of these, a lot of this business, but that comes with probably some benefits, but it also comes with some real downsides. And so it just changes the bargaining power between any local place and where they choose to do their thing. So that, but I gotta say, right, like I remember when when Soundcore started back in the day. I mean, Barry, we're roughly contemporaries. You couldn't get, the music scene here was terrible. There was nothing. We couldn't get the buses to stop going from Nashville to Atlanta. And George Parker, made a run at this for a while when he was at the Tivoli. It was AC that changed the game for us. It was them who really put Chattanooga on the map. And since they took over programming at the Tivoli, that's what's caused this spike. I mean, full stop. And Nick and his job, or his team, do a great job over there. But it was AC that made that happen, and nobody should be confused about that. However, right, like that relationship's great, still great. It is these macro issues with the industry that I think are responsible for this.
The only thing I'll say, to just specifically to Barry, your question and your response, Tim, that is this more of a national scope kind of thing? I think that there's truth to that. What Moon River did this past year was put all their pricing at levels on a national level, from concessions to ticket pricing, which was already pretty comparable to the industry, but certainly within the concessions, and I have a little bit of insight to some of that. And man, the only insight I have is from that angle, and that's where a lot of the blame is coming from in the hallways of that world.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know how much. I mean, this town is great, but I mean, we're we're a frugal town. I was about to say a cheap town. I was say we're a frugal town. We spend our money wisely. We don't necessarily buy tickets in advance. Sometimes we want to know for sure we're gonna go. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I wonder if the pricing might have been part of that. I'm not really asking a question. I'm just making a point. My question is, Riverbend, obviously, for those who don't know, who are not as local to us, was our 40-year gathering on the river. It reset. It got, by all accounts of people from this show, got better, and it's likely done. But that's a lot of people you've known, that you would hear, whispers from your friends, from your colleagues about the Moon River brass. They would have moved. They came from Memphis in 2018. They would have gone to Kentucky if they found a good deal. They would have gone to Rome, Georgia, if they thought it would have worked out there. But they chose here. So my point of that is that that's not necessarily, those aren't Chattanooga people. Those aren't people you're necessarily on an email chain with or a text thread. Did you hear about this? The hiatus. I put that in major air quotes. Did you hear about this when we all did, or were you getting whispers at any point in the off season that they were potentially going to take a pause and are at least taking some time off? I think probably not coming back, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, we had heard that they were thinking about it, and obviously we worked with them to see if we could work out any issues that they might have had to make it more appealing to carry on with the festival. And ultimately that didn't happen. But to your point about Riverbend, right? The festival environment has changed. And, there was a time when Riverbend was perfectly viable, but, things have gotten a lot more competitive. And, look, it's unfortunate that both these things have happened at the same time. Riverbend sort of crapping out as well as Moon River leaving. But I do think it's an opportunity. We had a lot of great conversations. I was briefly on the Friends of the Festival board. And look, I mean, it wasn't any secret that Riverbend was in some peril before, right? It wasn't, I mean,
Sure.
that Chris Cobb and those guys did a great job of the musical programming, but there's a lot more to a festival than that. And so, the conversations that we've had and had since then have been, what can we do, whether it's Riverbend or Moon River or anything else, right? That would be comparable to Chattanooga, what Jazz Fest is in New Orleans, right? Not just something that reflects our local musical culture, but food, visual arts, the whole 9 yards, right? That's I think what we need. And whether that's something we kind of try to stand up this year as a trial, or whether that's something that winds up being a reconstituted Riverbend, I think if there's some temporary pain during this period of change that we have to endure to get there, fine. But I think that would be a really cool thing for Chattanooga if we could figure that out.
And to that point, I kind of want to address this for people who are not in Chattanooga or close by. I don't think we are unique. No. I think a lot of cities are probably having these kinds of conversations, right? That's part of why I wanted to have you on here. This show has a national footprint. Yeah. We hope. I used to joke we're big in North Korea. The analytics said we were.
Yeah, those damn bots, right?
Yeah, it's a bot, but whatever. So to that point, and back to the Huntsville and some of the other cities, there are things that can be done, right? I mean, it's not just you don't I don't know, you don't get on Reddit or whatever and say, hey, I'm the mayor of Chattanooga, please bring your festival here. There's a lot of infrastructure, there's a lot of commitment. Yeah. Police, public works, all of those things, and Chattanooga did that and has done that, and I assume will continue. Yeah. But also the chamber has done some studies. The Sound Corps, Bryan mentioned, is committed to helping local artists, musicians. So there's a lot that has to happen. But the other thing that I've observed is you can't force
No.
it. Like, I remember there was a study years ago, like, the question was, what does Chattanooga want its musical identity to
Yeah.
be? As in, do we want to be bluegrass or country or whatever? And thankfully, everybody in the room says, you can't come that way. It has to happen. You know what I
Well,
mean?
it may be that we can help it a little bit, because we've talked a lot, again, the one of the surprising beneficiaries of this is actually the state of Tennessee. A lot of people don't realize that if you kind of x-ray our sales tax rate, the big winner when we sell a hot dog is the state. Out of 9.25% local sales tax, 6% of that goes straight up the pipe to Nashville, straight away, right? So the Commissioner of Tourism is a big winner, as is our local, Chattanooga Tourism Company, because of the hotel motel tax. And so, that's a relevant part of the conversation, right? We just have to. I would also say, like, we have that infrastructure. We're really good. Our police department's really good at managing events, and you can make it happen. If you want to dig in your pocket and go spend $1 million to draw somebody, to incentivize somebody in, or guarantee that they'll make X number of dollars, which essentially is what Huntsville's doing. Hey, again, it goes back to sort of the lack of or the consolidation of the festival industry. But look, I would much rather see us grow something from the bottom up than to just kind of try to do some store-bought BS and make it happen from the top down.
As far as Moon River specifically, when I asked you, had you heard in advance, is there any negotiations with, not necessarily Drew Holcomb and his crew, the originator, of the founder of the festival? Is there any negotiations of sorts? Was it like, hey, we're lacking this, we need more of this from you, or is it much more simple than that?
No,
Is it complex more than just, hey, we're just looking, we're taking the year off, get back to Tim, see you later, bye?
Look, I think they would love to figure out a way to get more people in the venue. They want to be able to sell more tickets. I mean, that much is clear. I mean, we can't change the venue at Coolidge, and we wouldn't want to. It's a fantastic spot, right? I mean, everybody loves it. But
I was
again,
shocked how many people we ended up putting up there in there to begin with.
Me
and it looked
too.
beautiful. It looked beautiful.
It's cool, and the artists love it. And this is the one thing I can tell you that's different from AC and every other promoter we've ever dealt with. AC understands that the artist experience is as important as the customer experience, right? And I think Drew Holcomb would tell you, I mean, it's fantastic, but the economics are the economics, and we can only put, so many people in that spot. Um, I would like to have thought that there was a way to, I mean, I guess they could have raised the price, but, again, at the end of the day, there wasn't any one thing. And, and again, we're going to work hard with them in the intervening year to see if we can figure out how to bring it back, because you're never going to compete with their logistical expertise and frankly, the weight they carry from a booking standpoint. But in the meantime, again, I think we can do something cool. And it's a great opportunity and a great teachable moment for us to rally the local community around what's important. What I also wanted to say around our identity, our musical identity, is that it is frustrating. I think you guys get it as well as anybody, that, Memphis is a blues, Nashville's country, right? Upper East Tennessee's bluegrass. What the hell is Chattanooga? And trying to figure out a way,
with the in between.
Right. But I mean, try selling that in an elevator, right? I mean, how do you? We all know what it is. It's kind of like the old Supreme Court definition of pornography, right? You know it when you see it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know it when I see
Chattanooga has this really cool, funky. I always think about old Bruce Hampton, the Aquarium Rescue Unit, right? This weird fusion vibe musical scene, but it lacks a meme, right? It lacks a simple way to express. To your point, Barry, I would love for that to just sort of bubble to the surface, but I think it may need a little help to bubble it to the surface, because I think if we can do a better job of encapsulating it, we can do a better job of selling it.
Yeah, I mean, out of those conversations, and Moon River proved it, and some other nightclubs that opened over the last couple of years, what we learned, AC, as you mentioned, was very key in committing into the city and bringing in music, but also people outside of the city discovered that they could travel
Yeah.
here, pretty much park their car at their hotel and walk anywhere they wanted to
Yeah.
go, to a restaurant and a bar and a music
We
venue.
are
That's an advantage
Yeah,
that we
our
have.
structural advantages are huge, and they would tell you that, right? We have the hotels, we know how to do event management, but I mean, and that's not nothing. Like having that institutional competency, the managing even stuff like Ironman, right? We are good at this stuff. But when you got cities like Huntsville that are willing to write checks, it's kind of like the old joke about the kid so ugly you got to tie a pork chop around his neck to get the dog to play with it. Well, we're
Right.
not willing to tie pork chops around our necks because we're not an ugly kid in that regard, right?
Right.
And I don't think we need to do that. I think we just have got to, again, some of this stuff I think is due to, post-pandemic inflationary pressures. We will be fine in the long run. This is definitely a blip, a hiccup. I can't say exactly what it'll look like, but I think, my job as mayor is to make sure that we come out the other side of it better than we went into it.
Well, I'd like to speak to that real quick, Tim. That we will be better, or fine, or this is not going to derail the city.
Yeah.
Not every city has a really big, cool music festival. I mean,
Right.
they just don't. And I mean, I'd like to think things like Main Times 24 have kind of become the celebration of the city. That's one I know you'll at least agree with that to a
Oh
certain
yeah,
degree,
totally.
that's become
That's my favorite. Yeah.
Mine
a
too.
big celebration of the city. I want to speak real quick though to the amphitheater. From my generation, and we're not too far apart in generations, but just a little bit. I would say the amphitheater discussion is kind of like the old high speed rail discussion, which is now back
Yeah.
in your in the discussion points here locally, but
Yeah.
only just in a discussion portion at this point. I know there's a little bit of funding, but I've been hearing about an amphitheater since I was 15 years old, and I've been going to amphitheaters since I was about 17, 18 years old,
Yeah.
and thinking, boy, it'd be nice to have one of these. And I just don't believe for a damn second we're ever going to get one after hearing about it for 27 years.
Well, here's part of the problem we've got, and this extends well beyond, issues around live entertainment, is that Chattanooga is a mid-sized city in a tough position, and we are not as big or as wealthy as an Atlanta or a Nashville or even a Huntsville. I mean, Huntsville on a per capita basis is a much wealthier place. And so it has had, to Barry's earlier point, kind of a depression era mentality, kind of a loser's limp, honestly, of like, oh, that's bullshit. It's never going to happen. And by the way, oh, I'm not going to. I mean, there are good reasons people don't buy tickets early. Like, again, in the aggregate, it's not a wealthy community. And that changes people's mindset, right? I mean, you're seeing this stuff play out now around the stadium debate, right? And people, I mean, back to the aquarium, people hated. If you go back and read the newspapers around 1990, people thought the aquarium was a terrible idea, right? That'll never happen. That's the stupidest idea I've ever heard. And I'm not mad about it, but it's just one of those unfortunate side effects of living in a place. I mean, look, that's why the Tennessee Valley Authority was founded. This was a very poor place, and people had like Charlie Brown had the football pulled away from them 1,000 times, right? And so that mindset lingers on. But I'll be damned, as a mayor, if I'm going to say, oh well, the hell with it, right? I mean, that's just a dumb mindset. I do think we can get rail service, and I do think that we can figure out a way to build an amphitheater.
Well,
I'm
and
certainly,
really,
yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. And really, just until recently, really maybe since Volkswagen, certainly this century,
Yeah.
people are coming here before that, this was a very settled community.
Yeah.
You know, in the late last century, in the the last 50 years, this was a place that people came because it was a very affordable place to live. There were a lot of things to do, maybe not like modernized the way we know now, but there were things to do and it wasn't far away. And so to get people like that, and I don't mean those people, I don't mean to sound like that, but to say, hey, we're going to do things different over here. We're going to build a fish tank,
right?
Like I understand why people are slow to come around to that, even in the more modernized world where we're at now. And unless you want to start talking TIFs now on the show, I don't think that's where we want to go today.
Well, no, I mean, we can't talk about TIFs because, I mean, look, TIFs are, it's really frustrating that we've never figured out a way to explain TIFs better to the public. I mean, part of it goes back to the basic, cognitive bias mistake that somehow you can equate household finance with municipal finance, right? They're not the same thing. I mean, TIFs
run it like a business, Tim. Run it like a business.
Well, I mean, in this case, it is more like a business. You also can't run a business like you run a household because you have more available tools, right? The thing about a TIF is, it is the benefits of the stuff that you do in a TIF are paid for by the investment in the TIF. The taxpayers that are paying for it are the people who are buying property in that, because as those property taxes rise, you're taking a percentage of the increment in that property tax to pay the debt service on the thing you've built, right? So it's the closest thing to bootstrapping or kind of alchemy. You can almost make 2 + 2 = 5. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So they definitely work. Again, you want to see how they work? Go to Huntsville. Huntsville's done a number of them without a lot of controversy, by the way. And so it does come down to vision and getting away from that kind of crab pot mentality, that negativity, that glass half empty mentality, frankly, that has plagued this place for a long, long time.
Yeah, I always, to me, it's sort of trying to explain it to people. I use the examples of restaurants and even the Riverwalk. You build, the Riverwalk doesn't bring in a dime per se. There's no ticket. You don't pay a ticket to go there, but it transformed that whole part of the city, and it just makes it cool. Yeah. It makes you feel like you're living in a cool city. Restaurants are another good example. If you have good restaurants, it just feels better. Yeah. If it's the same old meat and three, it's
well, and again,
music is the same, which is
to continue the analogy, Barry. If you were to go to the bank and say, "I'm going to borrow some money to buy a restaurant," well, how are you going to pay me back? I'm going to pay you back because this is going to be a great restaurant. We're going to make a lot of money, and that's going to generate the proceeds to pay you back. That's kind of how a TIF works, right? Like there's no taxpayer paying for that, except that it's happening through the sales tax collections and the property tax collections from City Hall.
All right, man, we've kept you. First of all, I wanted to say it's not in my nature to pick up a phone on a Saturday morning and call the city's mayor or send him a text and say, "Hey, can you give up an hour on a Sunday morning?" But to my earlier point that I knew you to be a music fan, I kind of figured you would want to talk about this, and I can't thank you enough.
I can't believe you didn't ask any Bonnaroo questions. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I was about to say, before we get out of here, we've got. Tim, I gotta think you're the most frequented Bonnaroo patron that's a mayor in this country. I think that's a fair guess.
Yeah, probably.
Your thoughts on this year's lineup and just your past experiences with Bonnaroo. Just in general.
Well, look, I think you can see the economics of the festival business reflected in this year's lineup, right? DJs are a hell of a lot cheaper than live music.
Well, young people like them a lot better than like Neil Young too.
Well,
right?
It's fortunate that they do, because they're also a hell of a lot cheaper, right? Yeah. So I think with the consolidation, I think you're talking. Look, it's a company like any other company, and they have an expectation in terms of return on invested capital. And I hate it, but it is, unless you're a nonprofit entity standing up a festival for your local, city, that's the business. Now that said, like I've already bought my tickets. I'm going. I'm always going to go. I really don't look hard at the lineup. I don't make my decision to attend Bonnaroo based on the lineup. I just love
we talk about that all the time.
I love the culture and the environment, and I love the the smaller stages. So I'm excited and looking forward to going.
We're regular. I know I say it. I'm sure we all do at some point. Who's at Bonnaroo this year? Doesn't matter.
Who cares?
Me.
Me. It doesn't matter.
Me.
Is the venue any good? I mean,
I'm going to see Barry.
Yeah, is the lineup any good?
And I
doesn't matter.
The main stage, don't like it. Never liked it. I like the what stage. I like that stage. I mean, I generally go VIP. I'm old and I'm spoiled in that regard, but it's just,
you don't have to apologize for that, Tim. Come on now.
And I generally don't stick around on Sunday night. So, if anybody's interested in my VIP passes, you can pick them up on the way home Saturday or Sunday.
How many have you been, Tim? How many have you been? I would guess upwards of 10.
I mean, yeah, I lost count. I'm going to walk. I'll show you my hallway back here is covered in old Bonnaroo posters. You can see that one. I think the big thing people miss is, the charity auction. They auction off all these posters. So you guys are probably missing out on that because nobody participates, and it's
going VIP and buying all the auctioned off posters.
Yeah, man. Well, they're not even expensive. Y'all should. Everybody needs to hop in on that. But yeah, I think it's been my first Bonnaroo. I'm not like a Jeff Styles or probably one of you guys. I mean, I think my first one was probably. I'm trying to. I'm gauging this off my son's age because I took him to see Jay-Z. I want to say that was 2000 and maybe 95, 05, probably 2008. Does that make sense? Something like that.
That's same as me. Well, what about last year? That was such a cool moment. You presenting the key to the city to Isaiah Rashad.
That's 2 years ago.
Chattanooga.
Was that 2 years ago?
Was it 2?
I think it was 2 years ago.
That was 2 years ago.
Last year.
That was 2 years ago.
I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, last year was I had a schedule conflict last year. I was only able to go for a day, and it was not a great day. But
okay.
But no, 2 years ago was very, very cool. That was a hell of a honor and a privilege, and just a really cool moment. It was that was super cool.
Whose idea was it?
One of my staffers who's it's amazing how many Isaiah Rashad fans I have in the office that I didn't know. Matter of fact, we just hired a new comms guy who worked for John Bel Edwards, the governor of Louisiana. Redheaded white guy who moved up from Baton Rouge. He's like, huge Isaiah Rashad fan. So the guy has an incredible following. And it's proud, it's a really cool thing that he's a Chattanoogan, and it's a cool thing to be the mayor.
I was shocked about that because we didn't get a heads up on that, which I was surprised. But luckily, I ran into you and you told me about it, and then we scrambled. Some of my biggest numbers on Twitter actually were the video I made of that.
That's great.
His popularity blew me away at the time. I'll admit it. I never heard of the guy. The guy's from right here in town. I'd never heard of the guy. The place was packed.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a big hip hop guy. My wife is, and so she knew, and she and then Dylan Rivera, who was a member of my staff, reached out to his mom and kind of made it all happen, to his credit. But when and my son had, I saw, and there was I think I was in Brooklyn visiting my son. It was the first time I ever heard his name, and I was like, wait, he's from Chattanooga. What? Anyway, very, very cool in retrospect, and an honor.
Well, and we actually a future episode of this show, we interview Olivia from the paper, and we talk about this. She took the picture for the Chattanooga Times Free Press, and the way it came down for me is I got a text from Ted Heinig, who you mentioned just a little bit ago, president of AC, said, "Are you coming to the show? The mayor's going to present Isaiah with the key to the city." And I'm like, mayor of what? Manchester? Which mayor? I mean, why is he given? And he's like, no, Tim Kelly. And so I sent her a quick text, and we rallied, and the Ken Weinstein allowed Olivia and Nate Gale, who was, I think, shooting pictures for Channel 9, to go in, beyond the usual first three songs. So just a great event for Isaiah, and his parents were there, right? His family was there, and cool thing that you did.
Well,
And so I wanted to mention that.
yeah, and it's look, this is going to pay dividends because again, I'm a musician. I've been playing in bands. I've been a drummer since I was 5 years old. And I can tell you that the health and vitality and the vibrance of the local music scene, which was always kind of there on a low boil beneath the surface, has continued to get bigger and bigger and better and better. And I don't see that stopping. I don't see the toothpaste going back in the tube. And so all of this stuff is, this is a blip. Again, I'll say that again. Um, Chattanooga is a musical town. It's going to be more of a musical town, and our job is to organize these assets in a way to make sure the world knows that.
Well, I'll tell you what, too, real quick before we wrap things up, that the local music scene and local people didn't love the idea of Moon River being here. Certainly not at the jump, and they might have warmed up to it a little bit, but
yep.
I don't think it's any indication or any indictment or have anything to do with this city. We were fortunate that we had a nice little spot for them to plop in here. They ran out of time. They ran out of room in Memphis. 5 years ago, I mean, I can't prove it. I was like, okay, that's great. They'll be here for a few years, and then, they'll hit the road and find somewhere else. If it's successful, they'll move. And I think that's probably what's happening. And I don't think that has anything to do with this city at all. Now, the Riverbend thing, that's a little bit of heartbreak on that one. We could spend another time on that, but I think this is just a passing fad, and we got plenty to work on that we're already going to do with or without them.
Yeah, with or without them, as you say. I mean, I will not leave the mayor's office if I can help it without making sure that there is some festival here that is reflective of local art, local culture, local vibe, that is sustainable and again more and more directly reflects who we are as a city and all that kind of wonderful complexity. So trust me, that is high on my list of priorities.
I do a local podcast that's all about things people say in this city, and I will not leave the mayor's office until
I'm
insert
not
here.
kidding.
I got that, Mark.
Underline it in red, brother, because I'm dead serious. Yeah,
I might even AI it too, and we'll really have some fun with it.
Go for it.
Sorry.
All right. All right. Well, you guys did what I was going to ask is the wrap up. The one thing I will ask, Tim, because I can just hear listeners out there, can you put a number on 2025? Do you think we have a Moon River in 2025, or do you think it's gone?
I don't. You mean like handicap it, like a percentage?
Yeah.
Man, that's a tough one because I think that there's a lot of that stuff that's that's not within our control. It is they got a lot of places they could plop that thing down to Bryan's point. And who knows, it's kind of like, in fact, it's exactly like economic development. Like I work with the chamber all the time on these big projects, is this thing going to go here? Is it going to go to South Carolina? Is it going to go to Kentucky? It's a poker game, right? And, how much do you want to, how hard do you want to, bend over backwards to make it happen? It's kind of is a bit of a math problem in that regard. So, we'll see. I would say it's probably a coin toss. But if not, I will say if we don't, then we're going to figure out something else because not having a festival here is not an option. That much is true.
Man, I can't thank you enough.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you, guys. Good to see you.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and I can't wait to see you at the next show.
Headed to the Chinese New Year celebration, but if I don't see you before then, I'm sure I'll see you guys around Bonnaroo.
All right, so there you go. Bryan, let me ask you first. Let me ask Russ first. What was your takeaway? What's your elevator speech from that show?
I mean, it sounds like pretty much what we already thought. It's not coming back, or at least not to that space, which is a shame because last 5 years we've gone and we've loved it and we've covered it, and so we don't exactly know what that's going to mean going forward now.
Bryan, takeaway.
Yeah, I mean the takeaway is that likely not coming back to the location that it is. Also fortunate to have a really cool mayor who gets I'll just say hip things that are on the radar, things that people of certain ages care about, and that was very, I think, obvious in the way that he responded to just this quickly to be on with us. But losing both our festivals is, it's a kick in the you know what around here. I mean, I'm not happy at all about it, and I have not been particularly impressed with Moon River recently. Not the organization and the people. They treat us like gold. The festival itself, the genre specific nature of it, I thought was kind of constrictive. Like, I think it kind of kept it from being the bigger, bolder that it wants to be. I'm not as big a worried about losing them as I are our other festival, Riverbend, but to lose them both just is like, it's deflating, going into a new year. It's deflating. And to hear our mayor say specifically, I will not leave, which he's running for re-election, in case anybody wondered, in the next less than year or so, which he will very likely win. So he's got 4 years to fulfill this. He won't leave the office until he brings another festival to town or creates one. It's a pretty big promise, and we hit record on that promise, Tim.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely have that. I agree with both of you on that. I thought my first takeaway was that probably not coming back, and it's not that big a deal. Yeah. I think I get what he's saying. It the fact that we lost them both.
That's the part that hurts.
That's
like
the part that hurts.
Like the soul. That's the part that hurts. Losing Moon River, if you just said, "Hey, let's just pick some stuff out of thin air that might happen," Moon River moves.
Right. I agree with that. And and part
of
it is because we get acts that come to those that we would not see otherwise. So that's a big loss. The other thing, and we really didn't focus on it, and it's my fault for not bringing it up earlier, is, and I really should have, because he mentioned it twice, he thinks part of the reason it's maybe leaving is that site was too small. And we didn't talk about that. I'm sorry for throwing that at you guys right now, but when it came, that was the target size. The boutique festival, 10 to 12,000 people, was exactly what was wanted. So we might have to revisit that in a later show. Well, the idea that it needs to be bigger
I
was
never
news
thought it
to
needed
me.
to be bigger. Yeah, anytime I've been there, you just think this is the perfect size. And I never thought this should be 10 times bigger.
That was news to me. And we need to revisit that later. And I apologize. That's my fault for not catching that and talking about it earlier.
But you're thinking as a patron, you're not thinking as an organizer, and everything's got to be bigger.
It's got to make money.
That's just how it works. It's always got to be bigger, and I hate that. I really do. Good enough is a fine place to be in my life. Good is not the enemy of great. Tim says that. If we were getting that, I would have had to give Tim shit for that. Tim always says,
"There it is, the enemy of great." The Bryan Stone credo: "Good enough is a fine place to be."
Good enough is fine. You know what the enemy of great is? Perfection. Perfection is the enemy of great. You'll never be great if you're trying to be perfect, and you'll never be good if you're only trying to be great. Good enough is fine.
Remind me next time we introduce Bryan. Good enough is a fine place to be. That's what we're going to go with.
How's it going? Good enough.
Good enough.
Good enough. I am glad you mentioned the lineup, though, because that's one thing we've heard is that it's a tough year to book festivals, and it's kind of reflected in some of these lineups. But then you look at also this week Bourbon and Beyond came out, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that in the future episode. But that lineup is outstanding. That's just Louisville. That's just 4 or 5 hours from here.
Yeah, we don't typically do teasers, but that's a good teaser. We're going to talk about that probably, if not next week, then the week after. But that lineup is almost fake. It's so good.
Yeah. Like, who made a mock lineup around here, you idiot? Get out of here.
All right. Well, thanks again to you guys, and thanks again to Tim Kelly. I hope that show was good enough. And thank you guys for listening.
Yeah, instead of never not great, we're going to be just good enough.
Just good enough is a fine place to be.
Consequence Podcast Network.